Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session at Imbibe Live Online, part of Global Bar Week. I'm Millie Milliken, Deputy Editor at Imbibe UK, and over the next hour or so, we're going to be exploring the art of pairing drinks with bar snacks and small plates. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined today by Nicole Sykes, Venue Manager at Satan's Whiskers.
Hello.
Sunny Hodge, founder of Diogenes the Dog. Claire Strickett, food and wine writer, senior planner at Adam&EveDDB, and author of Which Wine When. And last but by no means least, Jane Payton, drinks educator, sommelier, and founder of School of Booze. Hi everyone, how are you all doing?
Hi, very well, thank you.
Good.
Very, very well.
Excellent.
Hi everyone.
So before we begin, just a quick reminder to everyone watching at home that we are live and that we will be taking audience questions and any ideas for snacks that you'd like to see matched by our experts throughout the session today. So please make sure you keep them coming by entering them in the box to the right of the screen, and I will do my best to get to as many as possible. Right, let's get started. So first things first, why is it important to talk about drinks and food matching when it comes to making your business successful? Claire, should we maybe start with you with this one?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not one of the people here who runs a bar or restaurant, but I think, we've been chatting about, especially in the current situation, curfews at 10 o'clock, people are going out for drinks and snacks, maybe not having time to do the pre-drink and the dinner situation. So I think any opportunity that we have to make every single bite and every single mouthful really count and really feel part of a kind of meaningful and memorable evening is always really important, and something I think a lot of other countries do much better than we have maybe in Britain, and we can learn from them. But it feels particularly important now in these kind of strange times that we're in, to me.
Definitely. And Sunny, obviously with Diogenes the Dog, this is something that you do a lot with your staff. How successful has that been to your business in making that a really central part?
Do you mean in terms of training the team, or
training the
with
team
with guests?
Wow, guest experience.
So I think, like in the simplest form, if you've put a lot of effort into your drinks offering, and if you put an equal amount of effort into your food offering, having the risk of two things clashing is something that you want to avoid as much as possible. And there are always going to be drinks and food that can clash. And also there's going to be amazing combinations for drinks and food. So I think you could have a beautiful drink and an incredible meal that just don't work well together. So I think in terms of guest experience, it's in our own interest to understand those mechanisms, to avoid the worst happening and to try and help promote the best things happening. And of course, like with your team, you want them to understand at least the basics.
Yeah.
And I think from my side, working in wine, there's a lot of sort of BS in the industry, and there's a lot of sort of hocus pocus around those combinations. And knowing, I guess, the science behind it, and understanding the really, really sort of simple ideas behind what works, what doesn't work from a broad perspective is key within the team for everyone to know that type of stuff.
Cool. And Jane, from a beer and cider point of view and thinking about pubs, do you think that's something that they take into account when they're planning the food and drink offering they have? Or do you think there's maybe some more work to be done in that area?
Some pubs do have a good food and drink offering that's matched together, but most don't. There's an awful lot of work that needs to go on. The thing about beer and cider in this country is because it's served in increments of pints, it has this sort of casualness to it. People don't realise that it goes with anything more than crisps on the bar. Some of my best experiences of dining have been with cider and with beer matched beautifully together. So there does need to be more reverence given to beer and cider for sure, and knowledge that you can match beer and cider with any food at all. If you can match wine with any food, you can equally match beer and cider with any food. In fact, beer goes with every single dish on the menu, sweet included, desserts, breakfast, from breakfast until the after dinner cheese plate. Beer can be matched. It's just a question of knowing about and being educated.
Definitely. And Nicole, in terms of the bar offering, in terms of sort of pairing cocktails and food, do you think that's a really important part for every bar, or do you think it's more specific towards types of bars, or bars maybe within restaurants as opposed to standalone ones?
Yeah, I think I mean, now more than ever, it's more important for bars to explore their options and what they can offer, because like we mentioned earlier, people don't have the time with the curfew to have the pre-dinner, then have dinner, and then maybe have an after dinner drink. It's all, if people are going out, they're choosing one destination, and it needs to be more of a one size fits all now. But also understanding that not everywhere has, the space, the time, or the people that are able to execute bar snacks. For example, there's a lot of bars in London that don't have access to a kitchen. But there's definitely ways around that. I know for us, we do have access to a kitchen, but we don't have the bodies to have a full-time chef. So we've made a bar snack menu that us as floor and bartenders can make ourselves. So there is definitely ways around it. It's just, again, making it accessible and easy for the business, but also keeping in mind that people, it's expected now, just because people only have one place to choose, sometimes two if they're lucky, and it's very important to keep people as long as you can now.
Yeah, definitely. And sort of moving on from that then, when it comes to training staff, what do you think are the most important points when it comes to deciding how much training you do, or whether you invest money in it and time as well? Sunny, I know this is something that you work on a lot with your staff at Diogenes.
Yeah.
What do you think are the most important points when you first opened, when you thought of how you were going to train your staff in pairing wine and food?
I think it's, first of all, is understanding that a lot of our tastes and smells are very subjective. So when you taste something, or when your guest tastes something or perceives it, it could be very, very different from what you think they're saying. So I think with smells and tastes, it's very much like looking at a picture. You can have 5 people in the same room looking at the same picture, and then when you ask them to describe that picture, even though the thing that we're all looking at is exactly the same, they'll all describe it in their own unique and slightly different way. So I think from the team side, it's knowing that when you say acidity, the guests might perceive something completely different. And when you say dry or sweet or tannic or spicy or whatever those words are that are the best words that we have to describe something, or maybe the technically correct words, your guest might be perceiving something completely different, because tastes and smells can be quite sort of intangible concepts and ideas, and we're not very good at sort of describing tastes and smells consistently. So I think from the team side is understanding that when we're having those conversations, that there could be a lot of gray area involved. And the first thing is to try and sort of get to the bottom of the gray area and truly understand what it is that the guest wants, so that we can advise them what can work, what might not work. But the beginning is to understand clearly what they mean, and maybe try and decipher exactly what we mean by dryness, sweetness, acidity, spice, tannins. So get the basics down and then move on from there.
Perfect. And Jane, from a sort of beer and cider perspective, and you being an educator as well, what are the main points that you try and focus on when you talk to people about pairing drinks and food? What are the main things that you try and impress on them?
With beer, there's, well, with other drinks as well, but there are 4 words beginning with C: complement, coordinate, contrast, and cut. So those are the words that you use to decide which beer, for instance, you're going to have. So let's just say, if you're thinking about coordinating, so you're going to coordinate the textures of the food, the texture of the beer, the body of the beer, the body of the food. So you're coordinating those together. If it's a really highly flavored food, you need a beer that's got to stand up to that. So that's coordinating. And then you may want to complement some of the flavors in the beer and the food. So for instance, a beer that's got a caramelized character to it would go really well with food that's been cooked, roasted, that gives it that caramelization as it's roasted or cooked or fried even. If you're cutting, then you're thinking about the fatty or the texture of the food. So you need a beer that's got some umphiness with its hops, because hops have got tannins and acidity in it. And then you may get a contrast. So sometimes foods and drinks contrast work so well together. And I'm thinking of sweet desserts with bitter beers, for instance. Now with cider, because cider is this rather unknown quantity in this country, but if you think of cider as being apple wine, then you can use the same principles with cider that you can if you were matching with wine with food. But Claire, I'm sure, may have something to say about that. But, you know, acidity, tannin, sweetness, body. So think of cider as apple wine. And if you know anything about wine and food matching, then you sort of already know you're halfway there. So that's what works really well, I think. You know,
I mean,
cider is wine, beer, the 4 C's.
Perfect. That's really helpful. I mean, Claire, obviously with writing your book, Which Wine When, that entails you talking to the reader about what types of wine to pair with specific foods. When you were writing that book, what was your sort of starting point when it came to thinking about how you would go about sort of communicating that to the people reading it, who might be professionals or sort of consumers as well?
Yeah, so Bert, my co-author, and I, when we wrote Which Wine When, our goal was really to talk to people who kind of want to know more about wine but don't know where to start. So not to people like Sunny or maybe a lot of people in this audience, but people who probably aren't comfortable using words like tannins or not even totally sure what dry means. You know, the number of people that will say, oh, you know, I only don't drink dry wines, and they're not really quite sure what they mean by that. So our starting point was food, because that's where most people feel really comfortable talking about what they like to eat. Like, we're all quite greedy. We're quite comfortable describing food flavors. So even just thinking about that kind of training point we've been talking about, I think the thing I would say is don't assume anything. People are really intimidated by wine chat. Like, people will say, I don't want to talk to the sommelier. You know, they think they're going to be upsold. It's sad, but it's true. Start with something that people know about. So, you know, whether it's if it's sort of fish and chips or something fried, you know that something really fresh and zingy like a lemon juice or even some vinegar is you know, that's acidity, right? But you can start with those food thoughts. Or sort of sausages. Black pepper is really great with sausages. Lots of them have it in. A Shiraz or a Syrah will have lots of black pepper notes in it. So just starting with things that people are comfortable talking about, and then kind of using that as a lead into talking about the drink, rather than starting out with the wine, which will just often, unfortunately, for the time being in this country, make a lot of people switch off. So that's how we want to kind of use food as like a great gateway drug into talking about wine, basically.
Awesome. And Nicole, from a bar and cocktail point of view, do you think there's much out there in terms of training, formal training, when it comes to pairing food with cocktails or spirits? And how do you guys, I know you have the bar snack menu at Satan's, how do you sort of talk to your staff about if they need to engage with a customer about why these go together or what they should be drinking with the snacks?
I think there has to be some kind of formal training somewhere, but have I come across it or had access to it? No, but that could partly be just because it's never been a point of interest for us, as we are, you know, over 90% wet sales. But as the climate and the situation's changing, I think it's definitely something that me as a manager will need to explore. It would definitely be beneficial, and I'm sure there are materials out there, and if not, I'm sure there's someone willing to work together on it. But in terms of us, with our kind of simple bar snack menu, I think it's important training wise first of all, just to have staff to taste the food. It makes it easy for them to give, their personal opinions and really have a true understanding of what's to offer. But also, just touching on what Sunny said, like constantly keeping in mind that it's totally subjective. There's really, the message is like there's no wrong way. I'm not going to tell you that your martini won't be paired well with your nachos because you might enjoy both of those things. So more kind of guiding people and giving them advice rather than telling them what is right and what is wrong. Because, flavour is an incredibly complex subject, and, even dedicated scientists don't fully understand. We certainly fully don't understand, and this is mostly due to, being so highly individualised. So everything from how much saliva you produce, the smells of your childhood, etc., like all these things influence how you eat and how you drink. So I think just the same as we do with drinks, and as a cocktail bar, we put so much effort into, the thoughts of the recipes, the ingredients used, the temperature, how we execute them, which is why we can so confidently speak about them. So just having the same knowledge on the food that you're serving, but not telling people this is right and this is wrong, just guiding people and giving them personal opinions is a really, really, really nice touch. I think that always works, and it really works in service, in favour of our service as well. So,
right. We've had a question through from someone watching. I'll just put this to all of you, and then whoever wants to snap it up first, just let me know. How do you think menu architecture can be changed to guide guests to choose their food and drink together? Is there anyone who wants to take that on? Go on, Sunny.
So it's a cool question, because I think it's probably more important than we think or put time into. I know with the wine list at Diogenes, it's not in terms of price, and lots of people sort of put the cheapest stuff on the top and the most expensive stuff on the bottom. We do it in terms of body. So like the lighter whites, the lighter, crisper, drier stuff would be at the top, and then the bigger, rounder, creamier at the bottom. And same with the reds. And we don't tell our guests that. It makes our life a little bit easier when like filtering guest suggestions. So if somebody wanted a bigger, fuller white, the 3 bigger, fuller whites would be at the bottom and together. So it's easier to point at and it's easier to speak about. So I think in terms of like the layout of menus, I find it easier, whether the guest knows or not, for the similar to wines to be together, so that you can speak about them with your guests without pointing at completely different parts of the menus and going back and forth. And of course, with pairing, you could probably do very, very similar things with food. So when you're talking about 3 different dishes, 3 different wines, or 3 different cocktails, you're not pointing at 6 completely different parts of the menu. You're pointing at 2 different parts of the menu, which makes that conversation a lot easier.
Nice. Anyone else got any further thoughts on that at all? No?
Me, sorry.
Oh, yeah.
I actually think it's a really good question, and it really made me think about it, actually, because it's not something that probably a lot of places have had to think about before, especially pre-COVID, pre-curfew. But for us, I've noticed a big difference. We don't have the menus separate. It comes on one menu, so it kind of works in your mind that you just have to flip it over to the other side. So they're not separate things. They do come together, and they should be together. I think that's something that I've noticed, and just some personal feedback.
No, that's a great point. It's such a simple thing that people can implement as well. You're not doing anything that's going to cost a lot of money, but just putting that in someone's hand and showing them that it's on the same piece of paper. It's just a really simple way of sort of marrying the 2 ideas together. That's a really great point. And this session, obviously, we're talking about bar snacks and sort of small plates, as opposed to like 3-course formal dining. Do you think there's a lot of a difference between pairing food and drink when you're talking about bar snacks, as opposed to the more traditional, say, a tasting menu or a 3-course menu? Jane, have you got any thoughts on that at all?
Well, some bar snacks, like if you're thinking of olives and pretzels and nuts and things like that, they tend to be quite salty. So you have to consider what you're drinking with them, because salt increases bitterness, for instance. So if you're having a beer, then it's going to taste more bitter if you're having salty snacks with it. If you're having a tannic cider, it's going to taste more bitter. It's going to take away fruitiness. So in terms of those casual snacks, you've got to really consider what you're drinking. Otherwise, it's going to affect, they are going to influence in a detrimental way what you're drinking. With small plates,
definitely.
For instance, you can be more, it's much more food-like rather than just casual snacky. So you've got a lot more to work with your small plates.
Perfect. Yeah, Claire, what would you like to add?
I was just going to say, I think, we've talked a little bit about how contextual sort of taste is, and I think atmosphere and just sort of the mood you're in is so important in terms of the drinks you might order with your food, or the food you might order with your drinks, depending on what way around you're approaching it. And I think, just thinking casual, thinking relaxed will not always, but potentially take you to different sorts of drinks. So I'd say, that is almost as important, and the mood is as important an ingredient to match with as, any of the things on the plate. And also versatility. So, a very traditional menu will march you through your dishes and then match your wine flights. It's unlikely that you're going to have a different glass of wine for every snack. It's probably impractical for a lot of places to offer that as well. And you'll often have lots of things on the table and you'll be picking. So I think versatility, which kind of ties into that casualness, is really nice, which is why we can come on talk about it in a second maybe. But there are some wines which are just kind of have superpowers in terms of matching with lots of the sort of things. And that's great because you can just recommend a bottle for 2 people and they can work their way through that. So I think, yeah, thinking casual is really important here for being realistic.
Nice. Yeah, go on, Nicole. Feel free.
Yeah, I think just off the back of that, it's kind of the same when it applies to cocktails and cocktail bars, because you're usually 9 times out of 10 you're going there for the cocktail or the cocktail menu or whatever. The bar plates, etc., will be secondary or quite often a luxury in some cases. So choice is what makes it so different. There's probably been months of research that's went into wine pairings and tasting menus, whereas going to a cocktail bar, you not only you have the menu, but quite often you're able to order off menu, so you have a lot of choice. And then on top of that, you'll also have a beer and a wine choice in some places as well. Yeah. So it's difficult to have that perfect match. So just having kind of versatile snacks, one size fits all kind of things, is a really good avenue to explore, just because of the the array of choice that you're giving the guests, which is great, but in this case can sometimes backfire.
And in terms of talking about the atmosphere and what people are going to different venues for, obviously this conversation changes a bit when we consider the current climate that we're in with coronavirus. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I think we'd be remiss not to mention it. How do you think that COVID and coronavirus and the restrictions that the industry is under at the moment will impact the way that people are eating and drinking together? Do you think it'll be detrimental, or do you think there are specific ways that people can work around it to just try and, do a bit more selling and get some more of their produce to the customer in a shorter period of time? Go on, Sunny.
I think habitually, like in London with the curfew, I've noticed people are eating a little bit earlier. People are coming out a little bit earlier. I think I've changed my rota 5 times in the last month to make things as efficient as possible, but also to get my team in maybe an hour earlier, because people are eating and drinking a little bit earlier than we would have normally expected, which is a positive thing because it shows that we can still work around a curfew to some extent. I think as much as we all think, we've got less hours to operate. We're turning over much, much less than before. So we're all a little bit pinched, and intuitively you think, how do I upsell more? How do I pair better and more to get more from your guests? I think what we also need to realize is our guests are probably in as much as a pinch as us as well. Globally, people are making, a lot of people are losing jobs, making less money, working at 80% off their usual salaries. So I think the pinch is felt not just through hospitality, but through our normal guests' spheres as well. And I think preemptively, my first step at Diogenes was to counterintuitively like lower the prices a little bit. We started finding ways to make our own wine, to sell our house wine a little bit cheaper, and for us to make a little bit more on those margins as well. But I think across the board, instead of trying to upsell and pair and get more money out of people, we actually wanted people to spend less money more often, because it's a safer sphere to be in. It's easier to be part of someone's weekly or bi-weekly sort of wine pickup or glass of wine without making a big event of it than to be everyone's anniversary and birthday spot. Especially in this climate where everyone's got slightly less than they did before. So in a weird way, sometimes you got to think, let's play it safe, reduce our prices, and try and build a culture of getting more people in the doors than making someone feel, wow, I spent 100 quid last night. We can't do that for a while. Maybe we'll have to do it for our next birthday in a year's time, you know? Yeah,
definitely. Go on, Jane, we'll start with you and then go to you, Nicole.
Pubs are now having to do table service in a way that they didn't before. So it's completely changed how you feel in the pub and how you react to where you are. I mean, normally I stand up in pubs and I like to move around and see people and chat. But in the pubs that I've been to, sitting down has changed how I feel about being in that place. So somebody comes to the table and there's an opportunity there to upsell to them and say, right, I'm getting you drinks. Do you want any food to go with that? Now, if that had happened to me when I was standing up, I wouldn't have thought about the food. I would have just been having my liquid bread or, you know, my liquid apples, whatever I was drinking, and probably not thought about food. But the fact that you're sitting down suddenly makes it more of a, okay, right, yes, I could actually have some food. I'm in the mood for some food. So it has, in pubs, it's completely changed how people are being served and how you think about being there. So I think there's an opportunity there for pub staff to think about upselling in a way that they probably wouldn't have done before. You certainly wouldn't do that if you were at the bar. You know, they wouldn't say to you, oh, do you want some whatever to go with that beer or that cider? But in the city down situation, then it seems more natural that they would. So it's an opportunity, I think.
Yeah, that's a great point. Nicole, you wanted to add something as well?
Yeah, just touching on what Sunny just mentioned. I think keeping your offering low and consistent as well. There's a reason that people visited these, like, every place pre-COVID, and I understand, you know, we all need to make adjustments to try and keep up with and keep income and, you know, people coming through the doors. But if you change too much about your venue just to try and keep up with this, you know, the people that were loyal to you before and came for the things that they loved so much are only going to be disappointed. And changing your offering too much is going to change your entire output. You know, it's going to change the way the staff feel. It's going to change everything. And I think for us, what we constantly keep in mind being a neighbourhood bar and in the small neighbourhood that we're in is, you know, the offerings around us. What we need to do something different because, you know, we have Sager and Wild down the road. Why would we start serving pasta between 12 and midnight? It would be wrong. It'd be totally wrong. So keeping that in mind as well. And just not confusing the guests that we've had through the doors for the past 5 years.
Yeah, continuity at this time, and like you say, people come to you for a reason. So if you change that reason, then, you know, you're at the risk of losing some of your most loyal customers, and they're usually the ones that you rely on. most of the time. We've had another question come through, and this is kind of related to COVID, so I'll pick it up now, and then we'll move off the subject. I said yesterday CGA reported the importance of wet-led venues looking to expand their food offering. How do you think brands can help venues with this? It's quite a difficult question. Yeah, go on, Nicole.
Hopefully this will answer it. Recently, every Tuesday we partnered with Patron for Taco Tuesday. So nice. I think it's a really great way for brands to support not only the drinks industry but also the food industry as well. We've managed to I mean, Patron and tacos is a match made in heaven, but we managed to pair the two things and make it happen and Satan's Whiskers. So I think that's a really good avenue to explore, especially from a brand point of view. I'm sure most brands can find a category that works really, really well and execute it in a venue as well.
And how quickly was the turnaround in terms of Patron deciding they were going to do that and you implementing it?
Very quick. Yeah, very, very quick. It was great. We were lucky we had the right people on the ground at the right time, and the response from the brand was very, very quick. So it was a daunting thought at the start. We thought, how are we going to do this? But honestly, executing it was much easier and much more enjoyable. And it's been great. It's been really, really great.
Awesome. That's a great example to answer that question. Thank you. And Claire, we've spoken before about the culture of having bar snacks and drinks and aperitifs. Do you think we can look at other cultures and take how they approach and implement it here if there were people to start adopting that way of pairing bar food and drinks together in their venues?
I really hope so, because I absolutely love it when you go to, or if any of us can ever go anywhere again, when you go to, Italy, and actually this is much more in the kind of cocktail of you order a Negroni somewhere like Genoa, and you get this basically massive plate of aperitivi snacks, which see me through without dinner, although I'll always eat one as well because I'm greedy. But there is that lovely kind of natural assumption that eating and drinking actually go together. It's better for us all that they do. And there are, I think the sort of spritz culture in Italy is a really interesting one. But there are also some really nice steers on the sorts of wines that work really in a really versatile way with snacks. So, for example, Prosecco, which obviously is now sort of the subject of every greeting card in Britain, but a really nice Col Fondo Prosecco, which you don't see that much of here. In northern Italy, people will drink that with their arancini, the fried bits and bobs, the cheese and meats. It's really beautiful. You can work your way through a bottle. Similarly, in Spain, obviously, probably the epicenter of snacks on a global scale. Sherry. I'm on a one-woman mission to make everyone drink sherry again. I'm
with you.
Okay, my tribe is growing.
Sherry
is such a versatile food wine, and it's absolutely brilliant with little snacky bits and bobs. So probably a slightly harder sell than something like Prosecco, but I personally really hope that people learn to fall in love with it again, because it's just so useful in these situations and delicious.
Exactly. And you touched on there, there are wines that are particularly versatile when it comes to bar snacks. Sunny, in your experience, are there any specific styles of wine that work really, really hard and you can implement into lots of different situations in terms of pairing? Do you have sort of top 2 or 3 suggestions that people can sort of take away and think about?
I think broadly, if you want a versatile wine with food, sadly you're gonna have to go for like more, I don't know, safe options maybe. So I think those versatile wines, you want to avoid the things that could make things worse. So like high alcohol levels. So high ABV will make spicy things spicier. it'll make the mouth burn more prominent. So generally, if you go for low ABV wines, they're going to tend to be more versatile because they're not going to inflame spice or tannins or anything like that. Very, very tannic reds or orange wines can completely strip your mouth of oils and fats. And sometimes it's good when you've got a really fatty dish, but when you've got fish, which is, relatively lean, you don't want to strip away all the fats and beautiful oils and just be left with the fishiness. So I think if you want something versatile, go for something with very, very low inoffensive tannins. Spice, depending on your own spice tolerance, can make things worse. So spicy wines, avoid if you don't want your food to be spicier than it already is. So then you're left with sort of low ABV, low tannin, low spiciness, and those wines are not going to make any food worse.
Yeah.
And have the potential to make things slightly better, but then you don't have the fun of going for stuff that's going to work really, really well together. You're just sort of avoiding the worst case scenarios. So I think with versatile wines, you're looking at low alcohol, low tannin, low spice, and just going for something quite safe and neutral, if that makes sense.
Perfect.
I would just say that I think champagne is a really, really versatile wine. So if you're feeling really fancy, like, it doesn't go with everything, but it's got a lot of body, it's got a lot of acidity, bubbles are always great with kind of snacky foods. So yeah, if you feel fly, champagne, but obviously there's also things like Cremant, which are basically kind of non-champagne champagnes from other parts of France. So that's a good life tip, I think.
Yeah, champagne with everything.
Absolutely.
And Paul, does that sort of apply to any specific spirits or cocktails as well? Do you have any cocktails that if someone was eating something, you could prepare a specific cocktail quite easily with a lot of different types of food, or does it not work in the same way?
Yeah, again, it's difficult because of the choice. But you kind of have your safe categories, if you will. So like a Collins style of drink, which can contain almost any spirit, to be honest, is always a kind of safe category to go for. It has sweetness and acidity, and it's fizzy as well, so it can cleanse the palate. So it's always a kind of safe. I think splitting it up into drink categories is much easier than picking particular styles of drinks. Again, that also brings people personal choice into it as well, because some people might not want a Tom Collins because they don't like gin, but they can absolutely have a vodka Collins or a whiskey Collins. So I think that's a really, really safe and great category to use. Things that are kind of lengthened with soda, and also more kind of sour styles of drinks, like Charlie Chaplin's, for example. That kind of category again is also a great one to go for. But I think it's just much easier from a cocktail point of view to split it up into categories rather than single out drinks.
Yeah, I mean, we've just had a question through from someone saying gins have so many flavors already, especially when you think of flavored gins, but also with the flavored tonics as well. They said, would you suggest anything as an ideal food pairing with something like that at all? And I'm sort of putting you on the spot with that bit, but with the sort of flavor profiles that you get with tonics now, is that something that is quite difficult to pair with foods?
I think so. I think just because again it is so subjective. Gins they are coming out now with some crazy flavors. So for example, if you had a spice gin, like if you had a good spice tolerance, then that would be great with maybe a spicy dish. But I think with the flavored tonics, and it's just having that kind of clean fizziness, it's actually is quite a safe option to go for if you're having something that's saucy, something that's could work well with fish as well, if it was a light style of drink. But I think it would need to be very tailored to the gin and the tonic itself. So it's that would be quite difficult actually.
Cool. And Jane, you touched on this earlier in terms of pubs usually serving beer and cider in pints. Is that another way that they can present beer and cider in a way that would be more suitable to having it as a sort of pairing serving?
Yes, the legal measure for draft beer and cider in this country is increments of pints, imperial pints. Now, that means you can get a third of a pint glasses, and some craft beer bars certainly do that, and places that have a good cider selection. But not every pub has that size of glass. It's storage, where do you keep them, but also it's demand. You have the demand to give people a flight of beers, or for people to think, oh, I'll have a third of that and I'll have a third of that, and just taste a few different beers or ciders. So that's the ideal. If they are selling draft beers and ciders and they have a good range and a versatile, diverse range, then a third of a pint's are fantastic in a flight for your different snacks. But if they don't have that, then if they have great collection of bottles or cans, then there's no problem about the size of glass that they're serving the drinks in. So you could have wine glasses or snifters, whatever glasses you have, or cocktail glasses even. There's a real perception of value and quality when you're talking about a bucket of beer or cider, in a pint glass. Now, I do drink pints, by the way, in certain cases, but I wouldn't ever have a pint glass if I was eating. It would always be a wine glass in a pub, for instance, a wine glass or some more elegant glass. So I just wish more venues would take and casual dining places would think about the glassware. And it changes the character of the drink as well. The reason that you have branded glasses, they're designed for those particular beers or ciders that they're in. Yeah. So it's a really important factor, but unfortunately it's not taken into consideration in many pubs. And that means that then your perception of having a sort of a special experience with your food and your drink, it's not there, because you're suddenly presented with a bucket that you're drinking your drink out of. So down with pint glasses, unless you're on a sesh with your friends, is what I say.
On the sesh, exactly.
Yeah, banished from the dining table.
Think about, sure. Just to remind people at home to get involved in the poll as well. We've got that live. So yeah, do feel free to take part in that. We've also got a couple of other questions that came through from people watching. How often do staff provide advice on matching, or do guests tend to just eat what they want and drink what they want, even if they don't go together? I mean, that's something probably more aimed at you, Sunny. What do you think about that? How often do you think your staff are asked by the customers to recommend pairings?
I think so at Diogenes, potentially on a daily basis, but it very much depends on the environment and the place you're at. We sort of build this culture of creating an experience with the guests. So we will talk them through like what wines we could try and what might be new on the list. And so we would build that from scratch. And a lot of the time it's less of a guest pointing at the menu and just asking for it. We would have that conversation anyway.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of pairings, we would do that naturally because we're building that conversation, that experience as we go, always with the guest. I think in a different environment, at a maybe like a pub environment where the conversations are not necessarily the norm, where maybe the guy behind the bar or the girl behind the bar is more of a conduit for you getting your drink rather than a conduit for information and guidance, then the conversation of pairings probably won't come up and you'll just pick your food, pick your drink, and it's less relevant. Yeah. So I think the setting is a key factor in having those conversations.
Perfect. And just going back very briefly to our favourite topic of COVID, have things like the Eat Out to Help Out scheme made food and snack offerings more imperative, and how does this impact drinks matching? Does anyone want to weigh in on that at all?
from personal experience at Diogenes, I think when we did do Eat Out Help Out, I think we saw more people ordering more food. So if anything, it probably had less of an effect. In a way, psychologically, it sort of cheapened the food offering and allowed us to eat more. So I think when you are picking and choosing, and you're only picking one dish and one drink, or two dishes and two drinks, then you really put emphasis and thought into that, because you think, are these the best choices that I'm making? But I think with Eat Out Help Out, when people generally ordered almost twice as much to get their money's worth on those days, the decisions were less thought out and more about let's get the most for our money.
Yeah.
Interesting. Perfect. Cool. All right. Well, I have a little challenge for all of you. 3 kind of bar snacks that you would see quite a lot, maybe not in a restaurant setting, but in a bar or a pub, say. And I'm going to run through them one by one, and then if you could all give me your respective drinks matching, that would be great. So I reckon if we go in the order of Sunny, Nicole, Jane, and then Claire for each, that would be grand. So I'm going to set you off, Sunny, no pressure. What wine would you pair with chicken wings?
Personally, I would not go for a wine. I love chicken wings. Chicken wings is my thing. And when I was able to, myself, my girlfriend, and the housemates used to ritualistically go to Brewdog for their chicken wings, which are awesome. And I would always go for like a low alcohol, low ABV sort of pale ale type thing. I think with chicken wings can come in all shapes and sizes, but if you're going for something super, super spicy, as we sort of touched on earlier, you wanna avoid higher alcohol stuff, because the burn is just going to be too much. I think if I had to choose a wine with chicken wings, I would go for something more aromatic, like a Gewürztraminer, maybe with a touch of sweetness, because some wings with sticky barbecue sauce could be on the sweeter side as well. So you're matching your sweetness, you've got the aroma there, and maybe an orange wine with a bit of tannins that can break through the fats, potentially. But personal choice, I'd go for pale ale.
Oh, what about you, Nicole? Chicken wings?
I think, yeah, similar. I would I like spicy food, so I would do that. I would have a glass of water. But I think for a cocktail, I think it needs to be like, you're going to be. I'm assuming the wings they usually come. They're pretty hench with sauce, so you're going to be pretty thirsty. So something that's kind of refreshing and they can cut through all the flavors going on there. Something nice and light and bubbly, like a rum and peach Ricky or something. Something that's nice and fizzy and is gonna reset you for your next bite.
What about you, Jane?
I'd go, well, I'm a bit greedy, aren't I? Because I'm doing beer and cider. So for my beer, I'd go for a Vienna lager, because it's got an umami character to it, but it's got it's got caramel in there, and also it cuts through the fats quite well, very well, with the chicken wings and any sauces that go with it. Lowish alcohol as well. And with my cider, I'd go for an acidic cider made from eating apples. Now, something I didn't say earlier, just really quickly, cider, if you make it with cider apples, then you're going to get tannins, acidity, sweetness. If you make it from eating apples or dessert apples, you're going to get acidity, maybe some sweetness as well. You're rarely going to get any tannins. So I'd go for my acidic eating apple cider with my chicken wings.
Lovely. And Claire, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm going to assume we're talking about buffalo chicken wings, because those are what I would order. So that's what I'm going to assume. And yeah, I would go, I think, similar headspace to Sunny. So a lot of spice always goes well with sweetness. So an off-dry Riesling or something really aromatic. Less, more sugar also means less alcohol. So yeah, a bit less burn, but I quite like the burn.
Right, next one. This is a bit more classic. Scotch eggs and or sausage rolls. Sunny, what would you
Can I take the Scotch egg?
No.
What's your favorite? I'm going to throw this back at you, Millie. What's your favorite part of the Scotch egg?
Has to be the sausage meat.
The sausage meat. I love like a really creamy, like yellow yolk.
Nice.
So I think I would just only concentrate on that yolk and go for like a creamy Chardonnay, something with like a little bit of oak, just really, really big. And sausage meat is not like the heaviest, bulkiest meat out there. So something that's really, really viscous, creamy, oaky, buttery. And then personally, you bite into that Scotch egg, you got all the yolk dripping out, you've got that really beautiful creamy Chardonnay. That's me.
And the yolk has to be runny as well. Has to be runny.
I mean, it's not a Scotch egg otherwise, is it?
What about you, Nicole?
I agree with the yolk. The yolk is so important, so important. It's just so many Scotch eggs are wrong because of the yolk. I honestly believe Scotch eggs and Scotch whiskey are a match made in heaven. I think there is a reason they both contain Scotch in the name. So something again, nice creamy yolks, maybe something like a whiskey sour, which is, you just can't go wrong with that kind of drink, or even, just a whiskey soda, a whiskey highball. I think they're meant to be together.
Perfect. Jane?
Well, I'm going along the Scotch theme as well as Nicole did, and I'm going to go for a Scotch Ale. Scotch ales are very malty. There's very low bitterness to them and a little sweet character. You're getting that umami-ness coming through from your Scotch Ale with your sausage roll or your Scotch egg. And for the cider, I'd go for a medium tannin cider, so made with cider apples, ideally West Country of England cider apples.
Delicious. And what about you, Claire? Are you going to go Scotch egg or sausage roll?
I think Scotch has had a lot of love. I'm going to think about sausage roll. When I think pork, I think the Germans, rulers of the pork-based universe. And so something actually not so dissimilar to what I said before, something from the Alsace, and white wine from the Alsace goes really well with all the delicious things that you can do with pork. So I think it would be great with a sausage roll as well.
Lovely. And the third one,
France and Germany, but yeah, that part of the world. Geography.
perfect. And the last one on our list, my personal favourite, truffle chips. Sunny, what are we thinking with this one?
Tricky one, because chips are usually like the side dish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how often do you think about pairing stuff with the side dish? But first thoughts are chips can be oily. What do you do with the oil? And then I'm thinking you want to get some maybe good high acidity involved to cut through, potentially really, really delicate tannins to cut through. So when I think high acidity and maybe a little bit of tannins, I think orange wine. So white wine with a little bit of skin contact, something with the acidity for some of them and the tannins that will cut through the oil. And then I'm thinking truffle, beautiful, strong aromas. You sort of want to match that with your wine. So I would be towards a skin contact, aromatic white, either a Riesling, a Gewürztraminer, or Moscato, or something along those lines that are going to carry the acidity and the tannins to cut through those beautiful truffle chips.
Perfect. What about you, Nicole?
I really don't like truffle. I know that even the smell of it, I can't. So I have tasted it. I have been lucky enough to experience that in the past to discover that I don't like it. So yeah, I think something it needs something high in acidity to cut through the flavor there. So maybe this is probably the Paloma's time to shine, which is also my favorite drink. I think it would stand up to the horrific flavors of truffle and has that acidity in there as well to cut through the richness and the fat as well, or even just something like a simple daiquiri.
Oh, cool, nice. What about you, Jane?
First time I ever had truffles years ago in Harry's bar in Mayfair, my dining partner said, truffles, you chase the flavour around the plate with a truffle. And I thought that was such a great saying. So with my truffle chips, which I could eat now, I'm going to go for something that works really well with earthiness. So that would be a brown ale or a mild beer. Both styles of beer are very low on bitterness, virtually no hop. So you get malt coming through. With my cider, I'm actually going to go for a perry, which is made from perry pears. So I'm going to go for a sparkling acidic perry. Perry works really well. Actually, I liken perry to Riesling or Gewürztraminer. So Sunny was just talking about those wines. So I think we're along the same lines really there, aren't we, Sunny? In our thinking. So sparkling perry, acidity and a little bit of tannin as well.
Great. And what about you, Claire? Beyond the truffle.
I'm feeling a bit bad because I haven't recommended any reds. I think any of us have. Normally with truffles, you can think of something that's got that kind of earthiness and that kind of mushroomy kind of, and there are a lot of reds that tick that box. But because you've got the chips and the sort of fried nature of it, I think you do want something maybe a bit more refreshing. In the north of Italy, they make a lovely truffle risotto that's finished with a wine called Soave from the Veneto. And so, as always, you can take inspiration from the way people cook and eat things together in the sort of local areas. So I think that makes a great combination. It's very mineral driven and refreshing white wine.
Great. And this wasn't on the agenda, but we've had a bit of a curveball sent through as a suggestion, as a snack, not maybe a bar snack, maybe more of a home snack, but it's an Imbibe team favourite. Many a press day has involved this snack. Watsits, and to be specific, giant Watsits. Can any of you pair something with a lovely bag of Watsits for me, please?
Where do I stop? Not where do I begin, where do I stop?
I think a cider would maybe benefit from this. I could imagine a nice cider and a bag of Watsits. That's what I would eat and drink.
Can't argue with that. Any other takers? Any wines? Wine and Watsits? Perfect combination.
I wouldn't. I can't stand Watsits. I think it's the smell. I wouldn't want them near me.
I think orange wine. Just go full orange fingers, orange wine.
Orange fingers.
I'd go for a pint of either London Pride or Harvest Best Bitter. I'd go for a right classic English pint of bitter. But it's got to be a massive bag of Watsits because I'm drinking a pint and I'm not sharing. I am not sharing my Watsits.
Exactly.
And by the way, can I come to the next Imbibe press day, please, if Watsits are on the menu?
Yes, I'm not involved, but Watsits will be provided. Just to end on, we did a quick poll at the beginning of the session. What would you pair with fried chicken and waffles? The options were brut champagne, pale ale, or a margarita. And the winner, which I think is the winner as well, was brut champagne. So Claire, I think you're definitely right. Champagne with everything. You can't go wrong.
You really cannot go wrong.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm absolutely starving now. And that brings us perfectly to the close of our session. Thank you very much, guys, for being involved. It's been an absolute pleasure. And to everyone watching at home, thank you for watching the session today at Imbibe Live Online, part of Global Bar Week. And thank you to everyone who asked some questions as well. We had some great ones in there. Thanks again to my guests for being involved. And all of the sessions will be available to watch on demand straight after this. And don't forget, there's a full week of content as well. Got more content this afternoon. And yeah, make sure you check out the rest of the programme. Thanks again, guys, and see you all very soon.
Thank you, Millie.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Ciao.